Welcome to What Brought You Here Today, an interview-style mental health podcast that focuses on real experiences and how we navigate and move through them. The guests on this show provide personal and professional insight at times and come from all walks of life. Not all of the guests work in the mental health field, and they've all chosen to be brave and vulnerable while sharing parts of their story with you. Please keep your own mental health and well-being in mind while listening. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to What Brought You Here Today. I am your host, Ryan, and today I am joined by Jessica. We met on social media, which love the world of social media, making all of these connections. And Jessica and I are just going to see where the conversation takes us today and kind of dive in. So why don't you tell listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So first I want to say it is so funny to make these connections on Instagram and social media. I think the one thing I have found so valuable in being on social media is like these relationships that I've created with other therapists, like across states away for me. So thank you for having me. So yeah, my name is Jessica and I'm a licensed therapist in California. I provide therapy to California residents and specialize in reproductive and perinatal mental health. So basically, that umbrella of struggles from infertility, pregnancy, birth trauma, and loss. And, before I began private practice, I was a licensed clinical social worker in the hospital setting near Sacramento. And I did that for about 6 years. I was in maternal newborn, high risk maternity, NICU. And I spent a portion of my time actually in the adult ICU during the pandemic. And, really from those experiences, I knew I wanted to be able to hold space for clients really on their journeys where the real healing takes place outside of that hospital setting and when people go home. And so that's what shifted me into this space. So that's just a little just about me to start with.
Hey, again, welcome and thank you for being here. What do you enjoy most about this work? I think we'll get into maybe more of the nitty-gritty to it, but what do you enjoy most about this work?
Oof, I love so many aspects of this work. I have a huge passion for population in particular between like my professional experiences and my personal experiences. I think my favorite thing is seeing my clients come in and just like tears of joy of feeling better or feeling this like sense of relief or celebrating their wins with them. That just means so much to me. I think so many of us therapists, it's not talked about often, is like we are bonded and feel that, sense of attachment in our therapeutic relationship. We want our clients to have wins and to feel better. And so to see clients come into that space and knowing that I've seen them walk that journey is such an honor and privilege. That has to be like my favorite thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's true. And I feel like the world of social media has also shown us that it's okay for therapists to be and act human.
Absolutely, which is so important to me. I really try to exude that idea of being a modern therapist and like how important it is that we don't have to be this blank slate. We're humans. I'm a mom. I've, been through struggles and just to know that we're walking this journey with them is so, so special.
Did you have support in your own journey in motherhood?
I did. I have a lot of privilege in the sense of having a lot of support on my journey. However, I don't think anything prepared me for becoming a mom. And I've also gone through my own experiences with infertility. And so you just don't know until you go through it. I think I had such great support. I had people get, sharing tips or tricks or, advice. But at the end of the day, once you walk your journey, you're like, oh, okay, I get it a little bit more. And that insight that I developed from my own experiences is something that I think really impacts my work in a positive way, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And that was going to be maybe my next question is how has kind of your own journey impacted your work and how you show up for your
Yeah.
clients?
Yeah. I think that out of all of it, I, have this sense of understanding pieces of what we go through as women on these journeys, right? Becoming a mom, going through postpartum, going through my own adjustments and having to build my own confidence of kind of peeling apart what the social norms look like of motherhood. And you see so much on social media, out in the community, in your doctor's offices, right? There's so much pressure to do things a certain way or to perceive yourself a certain way. And I had to break that down even as a clinician, really build back my confidence. And then when I went through my own secondary infertility journey, I had to really break that down too. And so it provides me in my practice just so much empathy and, really understanding that everybody's experience is so different. There's no right or wrong way. Yeah, I think it just goes back to those social norms and like really what we see and think is quote unquote normal.
Let's talk about that
Yeah, I'd love
because
to.
because I've shared like on my social media and through the podcast that I had a very difficult preg not pregnancy. My pregnancy was fine. I had a very difficult postpartum. I had my daughter in the height of the pandemic in August 2020. I ended up with an emergency surgery 3 weeks postpartum and was readmitted to the hospital. All of these things kind of happened. And I also had the privilege of having some support, but I think this is true of a lot of people who consume social media that we think it's going to be a certain way, or we're told that it's going to be a certain way or should be a certain way. And I'm curious what you can feel are like
Mhm.
the societal norms.
Yeah. So I myself, I've experienced like the population that I see coming in, those societal norms of I should be able to do it by myself. I should be able to get out of the house and juggle baby. I should have it all together. If we want to talk about self-esteem, right? I have so many moms, including myself, trying to put my jeans back on 2 weeks postpartum, right? Like, why? Why do
Why?
we do that to ourselves? It's, crazy. The challenges of breastfeeding and the pressure that comes with that. And then, right, recognizing, just like you mentioned, that experience of birth trauma and what so many women go through. And then thinking that we need to feel better with so quickly, or that we need to move on from the grief that we're experiencing, the challenges of bonding with baby, right? There's just so many layers to this experience that I think women just, we put so much pressure on ourselves. We have to have it all together. And really, we're not meant to do this alone. It is such a myth to like keep it all together and do it all by ourselves. Support is one of the biggest protective factors. And if we don't have support, what can we do to create it? And what can we do to plan for postpartum in a way that, is really supporting and nourishing mom in their healing journey, not just babies.
How do you break that down for someone who is struggling to really accept the postpartum journey and that it's not a
Yeah.
straight line and it's maybe not rainbows and butterflies and perfectly falling in love with your child?
Yeah. I think it's really taking that time to give ourselves permission to accept what we're feeling and those emotions. I think it's really a normal response for humans to, maybe we have a thought of, wow, I really miss my old life. This is really hard. And we want to negotiate that thought, right? We want to try to fix it. Why am I feeling this way? But what we resist persists. The more we resist it, the more that emotion and that thought is just going to hold weight and we're going to, it's going to persist in our mind. So just starting with accepting those thoughts without judgment, letting them be, and then let's do that hard work of deconstructing what we imagined motherhood to be. We can hold space for, we can still be a great mom and love our baby, but we can also have hard days or recognize the trauma from our birth or the challenges we're facing, right? Or recognize that we're feeling really alone, even when people are there in our home. Really piecing that apart and holding space for both those things, I think is so important just to start.
Do you find that a lot of, childbearing people have a hard time maybe accepting the disconnect there of this is what I thought it was going to be and this is what it's turning out to be?
Of course. Yeah, I think there's a lot of shame tied
Mm.
to that because of these social norms. I think it
Yeah.
feels, validly scary to admit out loud, this is hard, or I'm really overwhelmed. Am I cut out for this? Or those scary thoughts that so many of us have, and being afraid to share it. And I think that really comes from that pressure of those societal norms for us to have it all together.
Yeah. Oh my God. I don't know. This is making me so emotional. I don't know why. Yeah. I also I
Oh,
had a little bit of a heavier session earlier this morning and kind of broke
yeah.
down some of her motherhood experience and the trauma there. And I think it's, I don't, what you just said kind of really just brought me back to a moment of my journey. And I have a very vivid memory of remembering that I didn't want to feed my daughter.
Yeah.
And it took a really long time for me to make sense of that thought and that feeling at 2.5 weeks postpartum of like, why don't I want anything to do with this human who I'm
Yeah.
supposed to love and supposed to be maybe obsessed with, which I wasn't, but everywhere I was looking was like, you should love this child and you should be obsessed with this child and it should be beautiful. And it wasn't. And really trying to navigate that. And so I think that was just like a nice acknowledgement, like that it's okay.
Yeah. No, and I love that I say love, right? But I love that you feel vulnerable to show those emotions because those memories are so deep, right? Like they hold so much weight. And, it's good to acknowledge like the grief of those experiences. I myself have those like sticky, heavy experiences through my journey that they will come up and they
Mhm.
bring up that emotion. I think it's so good to acknowledge it. We don't have to close the door and put it away because we can put things in a container, so to speak, and we can keep them there. We can go through our days and say, yep, I have it all together. Cool. But it's good to go back to that container, right? It's
Mhm.
going to get dusty, it's going to get full, and eventually it overflows at the most inconvenient time. So it's like, why not walk to it, open it up a bit, and let's let our nervous system digest it because it can be expressed in different ways throughout our days, right? For maybe a mom who is feeling really isolated. Maybe she's getting overstimulated. Maybe she's having symptoms of that mom rage that comes out, right? It can be expressed in so many ways. Like, let's normalize the hard experiences that moms go through. And I love how you touched on like the difficulty of bonding. I think that's such a vulnerable thing to share, but so many moms go through that, especially when you go through birth trauma. I talk to so many moms that feel so much shame around saying, I don't feel bonded to my baby, but it's okay to feel that way and talk about it. It doesn't make us less than of a mom.
Yeah. And I think it's really, nobody can prepare you for that. And
Yeah.
nobody talks about that leading up to it. You might experience these things, which I think, I don't, is maybe like sad and frustrating, but I also can understand it now that I'm 3.5 years removed. Like the first thing that's not going to be the first thing I share with someone.
Right.
You might not like your baby.
And I think that touches on what we were talking about at the beginning. If somebody can tell us all the things and there's a sense of not feeling prepared until we go through it. And it's the heavy stuff, the birth trauma, the recovery, the emotions, perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. In fact, 1 in 5. It is something that happens so much, yet it's not generally talked about in our prenatal appointments, right?
No, yeah, I didn't get any of that. And
Yeah.
granted, it was a pandemic. There were other things going on, right? But even after the fact, I had the one PHQ-9, the one anxiety and depression
Mhm.
screener, no follow-up. I got a random
Yeah.
referral for a therapist a couple months later. Like, we noticed your scores were a little high. And I was like, yeah, that was 2.5 months ago. Who knows what they are
Wow.
now?
And, pandemic or not, like that time was crucial.
Mhm.
Moms should have been wrapped around even more. Isolation was high, loss of family members, right? The fear, just there's so many layers to that experience. And that I've talked to so many moms, even in my personal circle, that are like, yeah, I had baby alone and then I went home and I didn't have family around. We were scared for people to even drop off food. And that's a heavy experience. I think it's something that so many of us women are going to remember and hold on to.
Yeah, it was definitely unexpected, right? I would have never known when I got pregnant that we were going to go into a global pandemic. And I think even now, 3.5 years, my daughter's 3.5, it still is in my body.
Oh, yeah.
And I know that it will live there for a very long time, if not forever.
Yeah, for sure. And I like that you mentioned that, right? It holding onto your body. And there's two pieces to that, right? There's the grief of those experiences, and then there's the trauma of that, and really piecing them apart. And, something I say to my clients often is thinking of your life as this filing cabinet, and like all your files are different events that have happened in your life. And let's talk about the example of the pandemic and what we went through. That's a folder, and you're putting that in your filing cabinet. That's a really sticky one, right? And that goes in crooked. And then everything after that, it's a little off, right? It's a little impacted. And so, what we want to do, let's say when you're coming into therapy and you're doing that work, we want to treat that trauma. We want to pull that folder out and let your nervous system digest it so that it doesn't feel so revved up from that experience, right? Really pushing you outside of what you can tolerate day to day. It doesn't take away from the memories or the grief of that, but just letting your body digest that, because our nervous system is still trying to figure out what the heck happened, whether it's birth trauma, whether it's the experiences women went through during the pandemic, right? Or just in general now, those postpartum experiences. There's so many layers to that.
Yeah. Let's go back a little bit. You mentioned mom rage.
Yeah.
I, because of the work that I do and, the field that we're in, I am familiar with the term, but I do think that it kind of had a resurgence like through TikTok and social media, maybe the last
Mhm.
couple years. For those people who maybe haven't had the term, how would you describe mom rage?
I think it can look different for everybody.
Yeah.
And so letting yourself define your rage. I think when we use the word mom rage, it can feel really scary. Am I being mean to my baby? Am I this horrible person? No, let's use the example of I I leave this interview, I walk out into the kitchen, and all of a sudden I see dishes piled up in the sink. And I just flip, right? Like, I am so upset. It's this younger me just like raging, right? Like, I'm devastated. why all of a sudden, why are these dishes in me? Right. And it's like taking a step back and saying, okay, what's going on more so behind this level of rage? What's the root of this? What's going on? And so, again, like going back to, right, that idea of mom rage, it can be, feeling really angry, maybe yelling, maybe crying, right? Maybe feeling overstimulated. You just really feel like you need to tap out. And, I think it can look different for everyone. And I don't think there's any shame in saying that maybe you feel angry with your experience. I think, again, going back to those social norms, we are conditioned to think that being angry is not okay. Right. Angry is a healthy emotional response to our experiences. And if you're a mom, you're in postpartum and you're feeling frustrated and angry, that's okay. We don't have to tuck it away. Let's like talk about it. Let's digest where this is coming up from.
Do you think that ties into maybe some of the intrusive thoughts and obsessive thoughts or behaviors that can really come out in postpartum?
Yeah, I think that so many things can intertwine, and I think it can look different for everyone. Intrusive thought impact 70% to 100% of women at some point in their motherhood journey. I know I've had them. I know friends who have had them, family, everybody experiences them at some point. It's understanding the differences of those intrusive thoughts. But if you generally are feeling that sense of ick and they don't feel good to you, they feel uncomfortable, you feel maybe ashamed of them, know that those intrusive thoughts are okay, that so many people experience them. But yes, it can lead to that cycle of we're negotiating those thoughts, we're trying to fix them. But again, what we resist persists. The more we resist those thoughts, the more we're going to go through that cycle. And let them be. Let them roll in like a wave and let them pass. They will not stay there forever. And remembering that thoughts are just thoughts. But again, intrusive thoughts, there's so much shame tied with them. And it's so hard to talk about.
Yeah, I really love that you say, just accept them and let them roll in and let them roll out. And I will attest that they do go away. Sometimes, they still come in and out every now and then when I'm like very overwhelmed, overstimulated. Like when I've hit my limit, I'm like, I know this is happening.
Yeah.
But I think this is also an important part too that I try to do in my work is like all the thoughts want is to be acknowledged. They're, like they just want us to know that we know they're there.
Yeah.
There doesn't have to be any action. There doesn't have to be a response or a behavior associated with the thought. You can just say, I know you're there. I'm moving on.
Absolutely. Yeah. That feeling of urgency that we get with those intrusive thoughts that really like revs up our nervous system. That is a false message in our brain. And yeah, it's just like you said, letting them come in and letting them come out because they're not going to stay there forever.
Yeah.
However, it's very valid that so many moms feel scared to bring it up or, those feelings that come with it of, am I going to do something wrong? How could I think something so horrible? But I always say, you feeling that way, you questioning yourself and feeling so icky about it, that tells you alone, you are such a good mom and you are doing all the right things. These are just thoughts coming in.
Yeah. That's such a great point to recognize if it's making you feel a certain way. And I think they are scary. I know my intrusive thoughts were very scary.
Yeah.
And very much, I'd never had a thought like that before. And now they're just there all the time. And they've since gone away, but I've done a lot of therapy around that too, and work around kind of talking and processing and like, why do I have thoughts about putting my hand in a garbage disposal when I'm 6 weeks postpartum? I don't think I would have ever had that thought outside of that experience, which is really hard to kind of, I think, accept and navigate.
And it's again, one of those things that where I can say for myself, I was not talked to about intrusive thoughts or, PMADs and before getting to postpartum. I didn't know, that I would experience that. And even with my education, it totally threw a curveball at me going through that experience of becoming a mom. Just like you said, those thoughts, you're like, I don't think I would have ever had where I had my baby. And now they're coming up. What's going on? What's wrong with me?
Yeah. Right. When I, every time I hear, have you read the book, What Happened to You? Oprah's book?
Yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
So now every time someone like says that comment, I'm like, but wait, what happened to you? Not what's wrong with you, not what's wrong with me, but like, what happened that I'm having these thoughts? Oh, I had a baby
Yes.
in the pandemic with birth trauma and all of these other things. So now I can kind of make it make sense and make my body feel more calm and accepting of it.
Yeah. I think it's acknowledging those pieces, right? Birth trauma, giving birth during a pandemic, huge aspect. And it's okay to acknowledge it and to give space to it rather than feeling like we have to move on because we have to all together, right? And it's feeding into those societal norms. And I know for myself, I have mom bring up to me that idea of I scroll through social media and I see all these moms doing this and this. And it's just that reminder of that's not the reality of what so many moms are going through. That is just this piece,
Right.
of a quick video or image that we're seeing. And there's so much behind that lens and really giving ourselves permission to say, no mom has it all together. None of us do. We're all learning as we go.
Yeah. It's impossible to have it all together. It's so
No,
exhausting to try to do that.
absolutely.
And I think we've come to maybe the realization that social media is a curated highlight reel.
Yes, I can vouch for that, right? Like you and I both met on social media. There's a lot that goes into it behind the scenes of things. So for moms who are seeing influencers, this is their business. This is something that they spend hours doing and working toward. And, just to give yourself permission of there's more behind that lens.
Right. And many of the bigger ones have teams and have
Yeah.
people who record and edit and make it look presentable for social media for the intention of likes and follows and monetary payment because that is their job, which is fine. Good for them. Great.
But yes, I think it's a good point of saying that there's teams behind that. And, just to give yourself grace, like we can all, throw makeup on and look put together for 10 minutes.
Right.
But what are we doing after? What are we going through?
Yeah. And even before we started recording, and I was like, well, oh, I'm a mess. Like my hair is a mess. You're like, my house
Yeah.
is a mess. It's Monday morning, you know?
Yeah.
But that is the reality. And I think those are the conversations I think we should be seeking out and having more of.
Yeah. And I think that leans into just that topic of support,
Mhm.
right? As a mom, just going through the variety of experiences we can have in postpartum, the topic of those intrusive thoughts, all these things, tied with feelings of shame or isolation. What is something that is going to help with that? It is leaning into safe support, whether that's finding a free support group virtually or in your community, talking to friends that are moms that you feel safe with, right? Like, let's find and build community in that because it can be so validating to say, hey, I'm going through this, and to know that you are not alone. There are other moms that need and can relate to your experience.
What do you think is one of the more challenging aspects of maybe this journey and your work with with perinatal and motherhood and postpartum?
Yeah. Are you asking more of the challenges in my clinical work or more of the challenges that women are faced with?
Both, however you want to answer
Yeah.
it.
Uh, so let's just start with, I guess, the client perspective.
Yeah.
I think one of the more challenging things is expectations, social support and isolation, just working through the traumatic experiences. It happens so much more than what we talk about. And even just the perinatal anxiety and postpartum depression that can come up. That's very much a theme of what I see. And I think a big struggle is that isolation factor and finding your people.
Okay. Yeah, I think I can agree to that as a mom myself.
Yeah, I think, and there's sometimes, depending on the community that you're in, there may not be a lot there or ways for moms to make connection. And, somebody may be listening to this and say, what do I do to get
Yeah.
support? I don't have it. I don't have somebody to watch baby so I can get a break. And that is a really big struggle because we do need break. We need time away. It does not make us less than to need space. And if you're listening to this and you are like, "I don't have work and I need it," finding online communities, going to Facebook groups, really trying to push yourself to find those friends that eventually may become those friends that say, hey, I'll watch BB for a few hours. It's really having to step out of our comfort zone.
How do you navigate the Facebook group scene? I was
Ooh,
in some mom groups and it was messy. I left them
yeah.
all because it was like, this is maybe worse for me than better.
Yeah. So to be honest with you, in my personal opinion, I say use that as a last resort
Great.
because I do think that it can get wild in there. Use that as a last resort. I find it beneficial to look for groups in the community that are like out there doing things. So in my community, we have like mom walking group, there's an exercise group, um, and it may feel out of your comfort zone to get involved with those, but they are worth it. There are moms in similar stages with you that can probably relate to what you're going through. And not only is that helping that social piece, but it's helping you, let's say, with movement, getting outside, building back that confidence. But yes, I completely agree that those Facebook groups can be wild and to protect your space. So know where you draw the line and like what feels good for you if you are really trying to put yourself out there and find support.
Yeah, that's great advice. I wish someone would have told me that. They're like the Wild West. I was like, this is not okay.
Yes, it can get wild. And I think it's important to know your boundaries and to know that it's okay to say no and to step
Yeah.
away to what is not serving you.
Yeah. Especially during that really critical time of like just already being overwhelmed and exhausted and unsure. Like you don't have to hold on
Yes,
to the things that don't serve you because someone told you should.
absolutely. And I think that that also makes me think of another piece of, the common struggles that we were talking about. Another really big one is boundaries and navigating family dynamics in postpartum.
Ooh, yeah.
That is a big one. Gaining the confidence in yourself to set boundaries is a challenge. And I think just like the Facebook groups, walking away, protecting your energy, I think it's really important to constantly ask yourself in that postpartum period or even during pregnancy, every time you get asked something, can I come over and see baby? And you're not feeling it. Are you saying yes to that person because you genuinely want them to come over? Or are you saying no to yourself of what you need? And let's check in on that because we need to be saying yes to what we need in postpartum every time.
Mhm. Yeah, that needs like its own billboard.
Yes.
That that needs its own marketing team around it. And that it's okay to do that.
Yes, it is okay. People may have a hard time. It is not our responsibility to help people understand.
Right. I often
And
have
yeah,
the conversation about boundaries of the boundaries are for you. They're not for anybody else. They're going to make everybody else uncomfortable because you're making it about you.
yes, yes.
Right. And that's a them issue. That is not a you issue.
Nope. It is not our job to have to explain. But I think, the postpartum period is one of the most vulnerable experiences we're going to go through as women. And it's learning how to say yes to ourselves and what we need.
That feels like a really good place to end the conversation on this topic. But where can people
Yeah.
find you and learn more about you? You're in California, but I'll put it all in the show notes too, but tell everyone where they can
Mhm.
find you.
Yeah. So I'm in California. I see clients virtually throughout the state. You can find me on Instagram. I'm very active there at Holistic Perinatal Therapist. You can also check out my website. It is bloomwelltherapy.com. And I have a monthly newsletter, some blogs that I post once a month with some tips all around the reproductive and perinatal journey. So I'd love for people to come and check it out or send me a DM that you listened. I'd love to hear feedback.
This has been such a great conversation. Thank you so much for you being vulnerable, for allowing me to be vulnerable, for allowing me to just some space to get emotional.
No, I love that. Yeah, thank you for having me and being vulnerable. I think that just brings so much meaning to our conversation today and how much it can hold for so many other people. So I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you want to learn more or follow either of us on social media, you can find more information in the show notes. Thanks for your support and listening, and I hope you have a wonderful day.